How's everybody doing today? I hope you're doing well today. Welcome into our weekday Bible study. We are just so happy to be here with you, and man, it's a good day. We are going to start a new book today. So if this is your first time with us, congratulations to you. You found us. Way to go. And I hope that you find this helpful. I know it's been helpful to me, and I feel like some other people have found it helpful as well. We've gone through a lot of books together, several books together so far. This started as a thing we did on Instagram beginning in mid-March, and we decided to move it to YouTube just a few weeks ago, and we're progressing forward. So we wanted all the backlog to be something that people could find and utilize for a long time to come, and so that's what we're doing. This is a real approachable Bible study. We just try to keep things real simple, read a few verses, talk about it, apply it, and just make it to where anybody could jump in at any time. So that's what we're doing today. We're starting the book of Jonah, but before we do that, I just want to mention if you enjoy these videos, give us a thumbs up, maybe leave us a comment. If you want to, you can subscribe. You can click the bell icon to receive notifications whenever we do go live. And then, of course, around the Worship Hangover, we like to say that sharing is caring. And so if you'd share this video with somebody, we would greatly, greatly appreciate that. Today's big question as we get into the book of Jonah is, to whom would you not go? That is the big question that we're asking today, right? To whom would you not go? Because obviously, as you're going to see in just a moment, we're going to read the first 3 verses. In the book of Jonah begins with a problem, right? The book of Jonah begins with a problem, and that problem is this. Jonah is called to go to a people to whom he does not want to go. And that is the issue, right? And so to whom could God call you that you would have a challenge, or that you would say, God, I don't want to do that. That's not for me. No. Let's read Jonah's story, and then let's get into our own a little bit. This is what it says, okay? Jonah chapter 1, starting at verse 1. I'm going to read the first 3 verses. It says, Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me. But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord. Now, this is incredibly interesting, okay? This section, as it talks about this, is incredibly interesting to me as I read it, okay? And the reason for that, there's a lot of reasons for that as we get into this. First of all, Jonah is a prophet, obviously. We see that, right? God's talking to Jonah, and God is sending Jonah with a message to a group of people. That's what a biblical prophet is, right? That's what Old Testament prophets are. They are people who've received a message from God, sent with that message from God to a group of people. And so that's what Jonah does. And God calls out to Jonah, Jonah, get up, go to Nineveh. It's a great city, right? And call out against it, for their evil has come up before me. It's a great and evil city, right? You know, Nineveh is a great city in size and structure and in a lot of ways, right? But it's also an evil city. It's a city where they do not practice things that please me, the Lord God. And so Jonah's called to Nineveh. This is happening before, like, if you're a person who knows a lot about the Bible, this is happening before Daniel, right? This is happening before the conquest that made the Lord's people slaves in Babylon. And so God is calling Jonah, Jonah, go to Nineveh. It's a great city. It's an evil city, and take my message there. Call out against it, okay? And that's what God is telling his prophet to do. His prophet does not want to go there. And we're going to see over and over again, we're going to see as we study through the book of Jonah, just how much Jonah is just not interested in this. Jonah does not like the people of Nineveh. Jonah does not want to go to Nineveh. Jonah has a lot of assumptions and presumptions and prejudice against the people of Nineveh, right? And so God calls Jonah to Nineveh, and Jonah is like, there is not a chance in the world, God, that I am going to do that. And so the Bible tells us twice it says that Jonah is going to attempt to flee the presence of the Lord, right? It says in verse 3, Jonah rose to flee Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. And then at the end, or that's in the beginning of verse 3, and then at the end of verse 3, it reminds us he paid the fare, went down into it with them to Tarshish away from the presence of the Lord. Now that's an interesting thing, right? He's trying to leave the Lord's presence. That thought process is a really interesting thing. And as I read the story, what I don't necessarily believe that Jonah is trying to leave the Lord's presence, okay, in that I think Jonah understands, because he's going to call God later in the book the God of heaven, okay? So I don't think that Jonah is misunderstanding God's presence and the fact that God's everywhere. I think Jonah very much understands that God is an everywhere, omnipresent being. I think that Jonah understands that. I think what this text is really trying to imply to us is that Jonah's like, listen, God, if these are the people to whom you are sending me, I am no longer your messenger, right? He's like giving up his position because he doesn't like the people that he's been called to. And so he attempts to run away, right? If I move in the opposite direction for what God has for me, then there's no way that I will ever end up in Nineveh, right? I will never end up in Nineveh if I run away from the direction that God has for me. So he goes and he buys a ticket on a boat and he sails off for Tarshish. Now, Tarshish is a place that is very Jewish, right? He's still within the Lord's presence as far as the church and everything is concerned. It's not like he's completely abandoning his faith. He is abandoning his position. He's abandoning his obligation, his duty. That is what Jonah is leaving behind with him. But I think as I read that, right, I think that what that text is begging me to answer, and it's begging you to answer as we read this together, what it's really wanting to know from us is this. To whom could God call you? Like, where could God call you? To what people group could God call you? That you would choose to not just ignore his call, but to actively work against the direction to which you've been called. I think that's a really good question, right? I think that's a really good question because I think especially as the world right now is wrestling with the reality of racial injustice that is still occurring and very present in the United States, I think it's really important for us to begin to list out, like I truly believe, right? I truly believe that believers everywhere, we need to like actually do some deep work within ourselves, do some deep study of our own hearts, and we need to just list out, this is a people group that if I were called to here, I would have no idea where to start. I would be very uncomfortable. I don't know that I could do this because I think we need to begin to do the work within ourselves of understanding the prejudices that lie beneath the surface. If you are my age, right, I was born in the early 1980s, and in a world that was very, very different, right, in terms of civil rights than the world that exists today. So if you're my age or older, right, you have to understand that somewhere within yourself, right, whether it was something that you just saw as a kid in a restaurant or grocery store, or whether it was from your family of origin, there is the possibility that as much as you want to believe it doesn't, that prejudice does, in fact, live within you, right? Which then calls us, if we want to be people who are believers in 2020, who are willing to stand up for the oppressed, for the injustices that exist in our world, for those who desperately need our support and our love, who desperately need grace, then we have to do the work within ourselves to rid ourselves of those prejudices and dividing lines. I look at Jonah and I see a man who's called to a nation that he absolutely abhors, and it causes him to live his life in direct opposition, complete defiance from what God has called him to. God has sent him to these people with a message that ultimately will be well received. You'll find out later in the book. And yet, Jonah so much dislikes the people who are there and what he believes those people stand for, that he's unwilling to go to them. He's willing to attempt to flee the presence of the Lord, to abandon his position, the life that he's been called to for the Lord. To whom could you be called that it would make you so uncomfortable that you would attempt to flee the presence of the Lord? That's your question today. We're going to talk some more tomorrow about what happened. And I think you have a good idea of what happened. We're going to talk about that some more tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, once again, give us a thumbs up if you like this. Leave us a comment. Make sure and subscribe. Click that bell icon to receive notifications when we go live. Sharing is caring. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow.